Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Way is in Training. This is a podcast exploring how warriors should train and fight, as well as how they should live. We will talk about technique, but we'll also dive deep into fitness, mindset, and strategy. We will explore leadership and philosophy as well. So whether you are a young soldier, a veteran police officer, a responsible armed citizen, or simply someone looking for an authentic life, let's examine how the lessons of combat and preparation for it can help us fulfill our potential. Let's explore the way together and learn how the discipline of training can show us our true selves amidst the chaos of life.
Hey, everybody. On today's episode, I've got my good friend, Frank Proctor, one of the biggest influences in my shooting, especially when I first got started at USPSA and even before then, because he was one of our instructors at our SOT B for 20th group. He's actually the guy that got me into competitive shooting in the first place. So, Frank, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Hey, what's going on, Matt? Thanks for having me on here. So I guess my lineage or whatever was shooting. Got into in the special forces and got finished with the Q course in 2004, and had a pretty fortunate string of events there. The first thing I did when I came back from the course was I went to SFALC, which is, Matt knows, Special Forces Advanced Urban Combat course. So that's kind of where I learned how to shoot and actually hit things. But it was a cool thing for me because spent all the time kind of dedicating to training up and going to selection and the Q course to go to a job, and then the first thing out of the gate go to a shooting school or a shooting and CQB school. But I took it serious because it was part of the job, a very important part of the job. And anybody that carries a gun for a living, whether it's military or LE folks, that you're going to do a lot of things in your daily life, or a lot of duties and responsibilities that don't include the gun. But when it's time for the gun, it matters that you can do the gun, right? So I took that seriously, and not gonna lie, I really did like it. It was fun. It was kind of like my jam. I got to come back there and work at the schoolhouse as an assistant instructor the next cycle. And then, talk about a fortunate string of events. Like right after that, during that cycle, I got a call from the ops guy at the company, and was like, "Hey, can you go to SODIC, the regiment level sniper course?" I'm like, "Yeah." So he got all my stuff squared away. I went up, did SODIC at Fort Bragg, came back and did some other things around group, deployed, and came back and ended up taking over as the primary instructor for combat marksmanship. And then after that point, we got into competitive shooting, which was like a life-altering event itself, But yeah.
No, I distinctly remember the conversation we had outside a bar called The Office in Addison, Alabama, where you basically yelled at me and told me I needed to do USPSA.
Right. The Office. Allegedly that happened.
Allegedly that happened. Yeah.
Can neither confirm nor deny.
Rumors say.
Oh man. Yeah. So, a thought I've had, maybe let me share this for a minute. So my path with USPSA, when I went out, I refused it. If you remember John Nettles, I'm sure. John was had been the PI for marksmanship for group at different times, but we were running a sniper course, and I walked by John's room one night, and he was over there cleaning a 2011. It was STI back then. It was just, there were only STIs. Anyway, so he's in there cleaning the gun. He's like, "Hey man, come shoot this match with me tomorrow." I'm like, "No, man, that ain't real. That ain't what we do." John did give me some warnings there. He's like, he didn't really care if I went or not, but he was like, "Hey, come on and go." He's like, "But if you do go, some fat old civilian dude's going to kick your ass." I'm like, "Dude, come on, man." Like I was young, I was in shape, or younger. And I was like, "Man, I can shoot, Well, anyway, so that was 05. In 2007, I went out, I shot an IDPA match first. Then the next weekend, I shot the state IDPA match because that was the next thing that was available. And then I went and shot a USPSA match. All right. So when I stepped on the field for my first USPSA match, like everything that I knew about shooting, I could do it well. And I finally got to a place where I could teach it to other people, which wasn't an easy thing either. But I was comfortable in my own skin, if to say, with shooting, Oh man, yeah, when I got into that environment, I was like, holy cow, there's like a lot that I don't know about shooting. I didn't know this existed. But man, like just like with physical fitness, we grow to the environment and the challenges
Yeah.
that we introduce ourselves to, and that's kind of what happened for me for USPSA. And when I shared it with you, it was like, dude, I think it'll make us better. What you do for a living with the gun.
And it's so funny because it's almost identical what John did for you and what you did for me. Because it was a couple years after the conversation before I finally did it. And when I did it, I went to, have you ever met Les Kismartoni?
Yep, I do.
Yeah. So Les is a good dude.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, me being me, because I'm stubborn and I'm just like pigheaded, right? I decided to shoot my first match in the wintertime in Chicago, which
Outdoors.
means, that no, it was an indoor match. It means I had to find an indoor match,
Yeah.
right? So I find this little small indoor match up in McHenry, Illinois, and it's 2 bays, 4 stages, right? And there's like 20 shooters. So I go up there and I'm like comfortably arrogant. I'm like, I do this for a living. I'm going to do okay. Like I may not win because I'm not used to the rules of the sport, but I'll do all right. Well, I didn't know that there were like 5 GMs and another 7 masters out of 20 people. And 2 of the GMs were top 20 national, right?
Oh gosh.
Yeah, so they curb stomped me and took my lunch money. I went home and cried myself to sleep under my whoopee, sucking my thumb.
No
But
doubt.
I had a choice, right? Like I could do like we've seen a lot of people do this and they just write it off when they have that experience. Like, well, that's not real,
Yeah.
because it's not tactical, right?
Yeah.
And I like your explanation of what the word tactics actually means in relation to this. We might get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
But it's shooting, and shooting is shooting, no matter the application, right? And more skill is never a bad thing. So I decided to check my ego and go figure out what these guys could do that I couldn't do and why, you
Yeah.
know? And it was a game changer for me, for sure.
Yeah. Shoot, yeah, man. I can totally relate, man. Like stepped out there and like, as a dude that did shooting for a living, was like, all right, so here's 6 stages on a Saturday morning. I got tested. Like, hey, what can you do with a gun? I was like, oof, not nearly as much as I would like to. And obviously it's possible because all those people did it. If there were like that many people in the match, that's kind of where I was finishing. And, from a professional standpoint, it's like, well, hey, if that can be done with a gun, I think I ought to be able to do that. And
Yeah.
then from like a competitive standpoint, I didn't like the way it tasted, like, oh,
Yeah.
wow, was not expecting to be down here. So it was a drive to go back. It's another great thing about the sport, and the fact that it's pretty frequent and easy to find matches, like you can go shoot a match and like identify. I mean, anybody can go identify some things that they need to be better at any match, any stage, and then you can go work on it and go back and test again and just keep repeating that cycle, man. It's great
Yeah.
for growth.
Get that feedback loop, and
Yeah.
like something else
Yeah.
I think is really cool about it is if you've never been exposed to what good really is, you don't know.
Yeah.
It's easy to lie to yourself when you train in a bubble, like either just, a small group of people or just you yourself.
Yeah.
It's easy to kind of, justify to yourself that you're good. And then you go see what good actually is.
Yeah.
And it's like the 4-minute mile. Like remember like back in the day, like, I think it was the 40s or whatever, nobody'd run a 4-minute mile. And then all of a sudden one person ran a 4-minute mile and now people in high school are doing it,
Holy cow.
because they know they can do it. If you
Yeah.
don't know what's possible, then you don't know you should be striving for it, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And dude, man, the new generation too, man, like in shooting, I got into
Oh yeah.
in the USPSA in '07 and was really strong into it, like up through about '09 and then some deployment stuff and then kind of starting the business stuff. But um now, when I really kind of got back into it and pretty hard and heavy now, holy cow, man. Like another level of ability,
Oh,
what people can do.
there's some beasts out there now.
Yeah.
Like some of these young kids are just it's head and shoulders. Like if I ever want to make myself feel good, and I'm not knocking anybody in these old videos by any means, right?
Mm.
But if like I have a rough match and I'm feeling pretty crappy, I'll get on YouTube and I'll look up like the IPSC Nationals from like 1996
Yeah.
because it's like I'm like back then, dude. Like I could have been in the running.
Oh yeah. Right. Yeah.
And I'm not saying those guys weren't fantastic for their
Yeah.
day. And so, like Rob Latham's still competing, and he's gotten way better than he was then. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he's a beast still. So I'm not saying that. I'm not knocking anything, but it just shows how far things have improved.
Yeah.
It's just like a pressure cooker for technique and equipment.
Yeah.
And think about equipment. Like comps are common on carry pistols now. Dots are common on carry pistols now. That all came
Yeah.
from USPSA.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, yeah, and all the pushback on like gear. So when I started, was gonna, I think it was somewhere around 2008. I was like, hey, I'm thinking when I'm done with Army stuff, I wanted to do what I do now, like teach shooting, have a shooting school, something like that, right? So I had drifted into, I started shooting Glock, and then ended up shooting 2011s, right? When I decided I was going to start teaching, I was like, well, I can't. And it was a limited gun, for Christ's sake. It wasn't anything super special. It was just a 40 caliber, 2011 with iron sights, compared to like today, like there's people like walking around EDC and something like more race gun than that, but
Yeah.
back in the day, like if you'd shown up to a class to teach, anybody, especially anybody in like the tactical community with that gun, it was like, oh man, it's a race gun. You can't do, can't do the, we got to do duty guns. But shoot, yeah, man. I heard a city. I think it may have come from Chuck Pressburg. I've never met Chuck, just know of him or whatever. But like every
He's a
gun,
good dude. I've
but
met him a bunch of times. Yeah, I've trained with him. He's a good dude. He's
maybe this
solid.
is his saying, but I think I heard it came from him. Was like every gunfight is open division.
Yes,
Right?
that is
Like
Chuck. Yeah.
there are no rules. Nobody's out there like checking to see like, oh hey, you got to have a production gun. You can't have any
Hey,
modifications
wait,
to
wait.
your gun to
Your
win
holster's
this.
more than a quarter inch from your belt.
Right?
You're bumped to open.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, man, I totally get it, man. Like if the equipment can like make your life easier to do what you need to do and always work, then heck yeah, man. Why not?
Yeah, and it's not like it negates the need for skill. Like I've
Yeah.
seen plenty of people pick up a really nice 2011 and still shoot like crap. You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Mhm.
And then there are guys that pick up a Glock, like Bob Vogel, and do things with that Glock that other people
Yeah.
can't do with an open gun.
Yeah.
So it's the skill's still got to be there, but why
Yeah.
not make your life a little bit easier?
Right. No
Why
doubt,
not? Why
man.
not work not quite as hard, right?
So heck yeah.
So, what does your training look like? Actually, no. What did your training look like when you first started doing USPSA? Like, how were you? How has it evolved between when you started competing, or even when you were just doing, the SOT-D stuff and you weren't competing
Yeah.
yet? Like, how has your training evolved over the years? What have you changed? How are you training now, and how are you training then, and how did you get to where you're at now?
Yeah. Man, I would definitely say that getting into competitive shooting, yeah, I say just like open up like, hey, there's stuff I need to work on, because like when let's say like when I went to Safal, first get introduced to that type of shooting, and then got to come back and work as an AI. Like I would dry fire. Now I was the guy like in between firing orders, like I would get all my shit done, mags loaded and everything, and I would go dry fire what we just did. Um, and try and I had good dudes on my team, that like, had been there before. Some had been on the marksmanship committee. It was like, hey, you're kind of interested in. Here's a couple other things to work on. But I dry fired some. I did some, at home, but back in the day, dry fires was like draws and reloads and technique
Yeah,
stuff, When I got into
trigger presses,
USPS,
a lot of rack in the slide and trigger presses.
yeah,
Yeah,
right on, like this way not the important things to work on, And then when I got into USPSA, it was like, hey, here's what these stages look like, I joined a club off post, and I would go shoot pretty much every day. If I could make it happen, I would go every day. Every now and then, I would go twice a day. Not every now and then.
nice.
Frequently, I would go in the morning before work, and then after work or whenever I could. But I definitely kind of a lot more doing than training. I would set stuff up, little mini stages or part of a stage or in a target array, and like shoot and score, whatever. And even as I got into, even gained some traction in USPSA, was doing a little bit better. I was still doing that as like a training regiment. And what it would turn into is I would, first few runs on it would just be hot garbage. And then I'd settle into a groove. And I swear, man, I felt like I had some out of body experiences on a range shooting a pistol. Like, I don't know how I'm doing this, but it's like, it's working really well and it's fast. But what would show up in the match would be that same thing I would do in training was like
Yeah.
I'd trash a few stages and then, or a stage or two and then settle in their groove and do okay, but um, dry fire the right way. Um, Tell everybody this story, man. Like dry fire went from like draws and reloads, and it was accidental. I'd gotten into that habit of like every afternoon going to a range and working on USPSA stuff, right? So I went out of town for 30 days and did a contract training thing where I was shooting, but it was just like demos and stuff, right? And I was like,
Right.
damn, man, how am I going to get my USPSA time? So I made some little scaled down targets. You can buy them now from like Ben Steger Prairie Shot and stuff like that. But I made some and like thumbtacked up like little target arrays in my hotel room. So we'd get back from class, and we'd all like, go meet for dinner, or go have dinner after class. So I'd get back from class, and for 10 or 15 minutes, I would run through like stage stuff in my hotel room. Like I have a 3 target array and a couple things that look like steel, and like 2 each on the paper, 1 on steel, reload, turn into another position, shoot another couple of them on the move, accidentally, dude. And I was shooting a Glock 34 or training with a 34 and competing with a 35 at the time, but accidentally, well, I figured out that I could put something in the action and keep it out of battery. It's just I used a little piece of cardboard. Now I use zip
Yeah.
ties for that. But with it out of battery, I could move the trigger over and over again, right? So accidentally, I'm rolling through that 3 target array, and I noticed that I pressed the trigger on the gun for like the second shot on one of the targets, and the gun was in between 2 targets. Like, dude, that would have been a straight up miss. Don't want to miss. So I started rolling back and like, putting an emphasis on like kind of calling shots, but I wasn't really calling shots at the time. It was like, hey, I just want to know that the gun was in that brown thing both times I pressed the trigger. And then it turned into an ability to, at live speed, be able to say, like, hey, that was 2 alphas, that was an alpha and a Charlie, or that was an alpha and a Delta. I'm going to make that up really quickly. That I did 10 to 15 minutes of that every night for 30 days, right? Because I was out of town and couldn't do anything else. I came back from that trip and had I went from like a mid pack shooter, to like winning. I tell everybody like that, and no kidding, I wasn't even making it up. But like the Alabama State USPSA match was at my home club the weekend I got back in, and back then you had to mail in registration, right? Wasn't practice score back then. I'm old, bro. Um, anyway,
Not as old
um,
as me.
I was thinking that, and I didn't throw it out there. So um, I signed or showed up the day of, and I was like, "Hey, man, can I pay you and shoot the match?" The guy's like, "Heck yeah!" So I was a B class limited shooter. I won B class in limited and was 5th overall in the state match in limited. That was like leaps and bounds, from what I'd been doing, and I would attribute it to spending some time, and I couldn't do it any other way, but like I couldn't get any answers in the hotel room other than like where are the sights when I pressed the trigger.
Yeah.
Seems so elementary, but like I wouldn't do it. And I don't know how many people, could still kind of continue where like they put more emphasis on mechanics and stuff than like what they got to see in order to, do the shooting. But that was huge for
So
me.
one of the biggest things I got from training with you, brother, is your focus on vision driving the shooting. And that was like a game changer for me. Is that the beginning of that for you? Was that experience there?
100%, man.
Yeah.
And I can't remember if it was before then or after then. I'm guilty and have been guilty of trying not to do it too much anymore, but like regurgitating things. It's a bad problem in training. Where
Yeah.
people just keep saying the things over and over again because that's what they heard and the guy before them heard it and whatever. But I can remember regurgitating things like once I got into USPSA, it's like, yeah, I'm tracking the front sight. Like everybody else was saying it. Like, so I started saying it. Maybe I thought I was. I remember the day I really like noticed the sights in a pistol moving when I was shooting. We were doing a train up for Savag, and like and nothing sexy. We were shooting like 6-inch dots at like 7 meters or something. Nothing
Oh, I
crazy.
remember, I remember that drill. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
The big sheet of dots.
yeah,
There's like a
right.
million rows of dots. Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't want to talk anymore. So I was like, hey, Daryl, will you run the line so I can go shoot? So I go up there and I'm shooting, and I was like, bang, bang. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on. You mean to tell me that has been happening every time I ever shot a pistol? That was the first time I saw like a front sight lift out of a rear notch and come back down while shooting a gun. First time I really saw it. But I've been saying like, oh yeah, I'm cracking the front sight. Like, no, it wasn't. But just all those little things just kind of started opening up. For me, it was like, and what I try to do now, like shorten people's learning curve, if you will, like, hey, try this. Like, don't shoot 300,000 rounds before you start seeing this. Start seeing this right now and see what this can do for you. But yeah, I think the vision stuff. I believe over time, like try to simplify things a little bit, and shooting really is simple. I think it's the way I kind of present it now. But even like the highest performance shooting, you could see or do. It's only a few things that we have to see and a few things that we have to do. That's it. You got to see a place on the target. You got to see the sights. You got to trigger the gun clean. You got to keep looking at the place you want the gun to come back to. You got to make it come back. Any of your movement stuff that you do, like entries and exits, people get all wrapped around that now. I mean, that's just wrapped around like you putting your eyes and guns in those places to do those seeing and doing things. And then a big component is the mental side of it, and like,
Yeah.
allowing yourself to do what you can do. I struggle with that one still sometimes, like trying to make things fast or whatever. But
Yeah. It's like for me, like I think shooting is like the most zen thing there is, right? You know what I mean? Like the more you try to make it happen, the
yeah,
more it falls apart.
oh yeah,
Like, I mean, in practice, you make it happen. Don't get me wrong. Like in practice, when you're pushing and learning, you're consciously working on making it happen. But when you have to like demonstrate that skill, if you try to force it, at least for me, if I
uh,
try to force it at all, the wheels just come off. Like it's
uh,
just done.
yep, yep. Like, and I'll tell people like I'll do it, and then later through the day, people miss a target or something, like, hey man, like it's not that you can't, you just didn't for some reason. A lot of it
Yeah.
starts with, and I'm sure you read Lenny Bassam's stuff, but the
Yep.
over try, a term
Yeah.
that really resonates with me. Like when we step up there and like try to make something fast, that you usually gonna be some failure going on after that, instead of like, hey, what do we got to do? What do we got to see?
Yeah. What's the process? What are the details of the process we need?
Exactamundo, if we get
And just stay plugged into that.
right. I've a nugget I've been coaching myself a lot when I talk to people too. I'm coaching them, but I'm coaching me as well. But like, if it's an 18 round event, you can't fire the 17th or 18th round until you fire the first one, the second one, and the third one. So for me, when I can definitely speak from personal experience on that. If I'm just into like each shot, it shakes out good, and it's usually pretty fast. And I'm in a place now where I realize that there are people that are always going to be faster than me. But like if I shoot my game, it turns out okay. If I try to
Yeah.
like push too hard, like it just turns into a train wreck. Like hey, like I didn't miss the 8 yard target because I can't hit a piece of cardboard at 8 yards. I did it because like either didn't see everything I needed to see, or didn't stay there long enough, or like trying to make it too fast and push the gun
Yeah.
a good bit. Um, yeah, yeah, mental
So
thing's a big thing.
how many rounds are you firing like a year or a month or whatever timeline these days? Live
I do,
rounds.
I do. Ugh. It kind of varies. If I get, if I'm like all fired up, and I have been like really fired up about shooting here most of this summer. Been shooting a lot of PCC and stuff.
Yeah.
I can easily do, like say, because I've got a range like right out that door. There's a range with like 50 steel targets in it. So like going to train, it was like, okay, cool. Like let's load mags and go out and rep. But you know, 5 or 6 a month, 5 or 6 thousand a month, maybe
Okay.
on training. Maybe on the heavy side. Usually though, my like a legit training session. If I'm like, hey, here's some things I want to go work on right now. If it's not gun tuning or something like that, I'm done pretty quick, 30, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. And that looks like a couple 300 rounds, like of like really good, like, hey, focused effort
Yeah.
training.
Good
Uh,
deliberate practice, right?
yeah,
Good and
yeah. I do a lot of
mindful
other
reps.
just go out, have fun, just like, rip on some steel, which sometimes I think is like can be counterproductive to performance too, but a good solid sessions, in that range, like a couple hundred rounds, 300 rounds.
Cool. And like what's your like dry fire to live fire ratio? Like how much are you doing there?
Um, can't see it in here, but I've got we'll drop. There's some areas. These guys are hanging up all over the place in here. So I will, if I'm loading ammo, I'll have the press running. I either work on guns or dry fire while that's going down. Putting an emphasis, like when I travel, I drop fire like a good bit the night before and prior to, but base stuff like, hey, see a particular place, see the dot the way you need to do it, like just super fundamental Barney style, like deliberate, and then kind of add a little movement into presentations. I call them mounts, but those, and then I'll start working into something, that stuff I need to work on, triggering the gun clean. With with speed in mind and like a little different target size and whatnot. How fast can you trigger the gun for a 10-yard target versus a 20-yard target, and like try to get some dry fire reps on that. Not a lot of move, every now and then, a little bit of like moving around every now and then, a little bit of, throw a reload into it. If I do holster stuff, it's like, hey, first shot, dropping the hammer on the pistol is just something small at speed. So like a little, you know, something I know is a problem for me, like the get mentally tense or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
hey, like there's that small thing. You're gonna do this for speed, but you can only do it as fast as you can do it, and you got to trigger the gun clean. So I'll do that, and then like roll into like an array where be like what paper targets will look like at 10. Um, that kind of stuff. That's my dry fire regime these days.
And I'm going to shift gears for a minute because this is something I really want your opinion on. And we haven't talked about this before. We talked about a lot of stuff, but I don't think we ever talked about this. When I first started getting like serious into USPSA, right, I discovered a benefit I never expected. Like I was doing it for the shooting, just for the pure hard skill of shooting. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I wasn't expecting it to help my tactics, my CQB or anything like that at all, apart from the shooting piece. And then when I made M in USPSA, I discovered that all of a sudden CQB became a whole lot easier. And my theory on that is that even though they were very different, the reason it became easier for me is that I was seeing and processing faster. I'd increased like my visual processing speed, which is everything for CQB, just like it's everything for USPSA, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like I didn't expect that benefit. Like I was doing it just for the shooting part. You know what I mean? I figured
Mm-hmm.
I get better CQB by doing CQB.
Yeah.
But just like a lot of the stuff you do as an athlete to get better at sprinting doesn't look like the finished product, right?
Yeah.
But those building blocks that build those attributes improve the finished product. I think like running a stage, the ability to run a stage at a high level in USPSA, and by high level, I'm not talking about winning nationals. I mean like B class and above,
Mm-hmm.
I think that improves your visual processing speed to a large degree, which makes tactics easier, which makes CQB easier, which makes all that stuff easier because you're picking up data faster and processing it faster. Did you find the same thing? Like, what are your thoughts on that, dude?
100%. Yeah. So when I was doing USPSA and still, the PI for marksmanship, I felt like I was bringing stuff back, to work back to the guys. Early on though, it was like mechanics, gun handling stuff,
Yeah.
a little bit of movement technique stuff. The superficial stuff, right?
Right.
But I remember the day where it like clicked, like, aha, this is what I got from that made me better and it was CQB. It was out there at 24 Alpha, and it's in the shoot house.
Yeah.
Probably, I think it was like an instructor train up or something. But I was like the first dude on the door, and I don't know, it was a shotgun breach, where it had to be a shotgun breach. It was close, right? So door open, and I started moving, it was slow in my mind because the eyes were like gathering this information so fast. They developed this habit, right? So I was like, hey, this is a corner fed room. It's like the door open hit a wall, right? So this is a corner fed room, like I'm all right, boom, I'm looking down that wall, like hearing nothing there. Let's start looking the other way, like, hey, I've seen everything in this room except that corner. And this was all like at like, not like stopped and like pine the thing out. It was like in a walk.
Right.
All that
Yeah.
information came in. So like, I'm going there. Oh, there's nothing to do there either. There's a door over there that I saw there earlier. Like, let's go there, and it was super, super casual. Yeah. So 100% like on the exposure to,
I'm losing you, Frank. You locked up on me.
Can you hear me?
I can now. Can we back up to like
Yeah.
going through the door? Cause I lost you a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah. So it was like at like a walk, like a normal walking speed, right? The information, how it was just flowing in my mind. It's like, hey, it's a corner fed room because I saw the door hit the wall. I was like, all right, cool. Keep looking down that wall. There's nothing there. All right, go to, start shifting the eyes that way. I was like, all right, cool. I've seen everything before. I'm still a step away from the door, right? From the opening. Like I've seen everything in there except that corner, right? So, eyes and guns are like geared up to go do that. I was like, hey, there's nothing to do here either. There's a door over there that I saw earlier. Let's go there, and it just happens. It was like super casual. And I think on the casual side, like in USPSA, you expose yourself to like max human performance kind of shooting, like
Right.
you rehearse a stage in like 5 or 6 minutes. You figure out like the most efficient way you're going to do it. And then you kind of plug that in your mind. And when the timer goes off, it's not like, oh, hey, like go right here. There's a target. There's some sights. There's a trigger. Like, no, dude, it's like times, 15 targets, or 10 to 15 targets. Like, go here, do that, and it happens just automatically. And it's happening, you get to where you're pushing yourself like at like close to like max human performance speed, So then you get to CQB and like the movements, similar movements, but you don't move that fast, but the eyes do. Right. And then it's
Yes.
super easy to the eyes after you've gotten all of that work. A single skill set, I would think, that translates over target transitions.
Yes.
As a competitive shooter, I mean, you're going to transition a lot of times, right? And I don't know if you may have remembered this from like the Valley days. I can remember guys saying like, "Hey, the people who are winning like the IPSC nationals." They called it IPSC instead of USPSA back then, but they're winning by 0.2 of a second. And the point that they were trying to make to us, I think, was like, "Hey, little stuff matters, right?" But you know, people don't win the nationals by 0.2 of a second, but or win a match or a stage by 0.2. It's like multiple occurrences of 0.2 of a
Two
second
tenths.
that
Yes.
add
It's
up to
adding
like
it up over and over and over
really
again.
big time, right? So target transitions are one of those things that, just the base act of like, moving your eyes 6 feet from one target to another. If you do that 0.2 of a second faster than somebody else, like, okay, you got that, but you're probably also going to make that position change faster. You're going to make that wider target transition faster because you have a habit of doing things sooner and it adds up. Um, Combat shooters don't really get that they don't get that work. They don't get the introduction to those kind of challenges, like now, as a combat shooter, you're not going to transition through people, but training target transitions, I think like is a really good way to introduce that visual aggressiveness stuff, like, doing things sooner, like a philosophy, a mindset of doing stuff sooner, getting those eyes going, you know, but
One of the things you kind of touched on something there that I'd love to talk to you about too is like, and that's good stuff, dude. But one of the things that I think people don't understand when it comes to the tactical side of things, right? Whether it's civilian defensive shooters or, us in SF or when I was on SWAT or any of that, right? Is that they overemphasize training like the fight. And I'm not saying you never train like the fight. Of course you do.
yeah.
But there's no MMA fighter that does nothing but spar full contact every time he works out, right? There's no football team that does
Yeah.
nothing but put on the pads and do a full scrimmage. They do all this
Yeah.
other stuff that
Yeah.
looks different than their fight, but makes them better at their fight.
Yeah.
And there are things you do that have a training value that helps you in the application that aren't the application, right?
Yeah.
Like, like for a civilian, the chances of them ever doing a reload under fire with a pistol are almost non-existent. Like they'd have to be an extreme outlier for a civilian gunfight, right? I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but it's almost unlikely. You know what I mean? It's almost completely unlikely. But the act of getting good at that reload helps build that index, just like the draws help build the index. And like, cops all the time are like, well, if I have to try to beat somebody on the draw, I've already made a mistake. I'm not disagreeing. But learning to draw, well, first off, you might have to. It's like an emergency. It's like a reserve parachute, right?
Okay.
You may not ever need it, but if you need it, you really need it. So you better be
Right.
good at it.
Yeah.
Right. But even take that away from it, I think the draw is one of the best ways to build an index. And what makes you a better shooter? An index, a good index, So I think people misunderstand the value of training things that they may not ever do or may not be likely to do to a high level because they carry over. Just like you were talking about with the target transitions for combat shooters.
Yeah.
Am I making sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's like, and I'll push it to combat shooters, cops. And these days I classify, I've dropped the tactical thing out, so it's like, you're either like a recreational shooter, you just like shooting, you're a competitive shooter, you're going to shoot a match. Or if you're going to fight somebody with a gun, you're a combat shooter, whether you're like,
Yeah, makes sense.
it's EDC at the grocery store or in Ramadi, like it's combat if you're fighting somebody. But, but I'll introduce it to folks like, hey, look, get it. You're not going to like transition through people, but let's do some target transition exercises to help us understand. Everybody's got the ISP. It's just like understanding that you can and how it all shakes out for you, and then it'll build that habit for me, it did, like USPSA, if USPSA was like, bullseye, I never would have gotten like the faster thing at like, seeing shit faster for CQB, but like the fact that like you don't just shoot that one target, you're going to shoot all of those, and those eyes have to go around and drop the train. That was huge, and that is like knowing that you can and creating a habit. And I call it like visual aggressiveness too. Like it's like,
Yeah.
doing CQB, like, to for USPSA to like, in order to shoot the next target, you got to want to see it. You got to see it, and you got to want to see it. Entries and exits, that's the thing that, well, back in my day, back in my day, but a thing that was floating around a lot when I first got into USPSA was like, there were a lot of boxes, like box to box shooting, So like, yeah, all the GMs are shooting as soon as their foot touches the ground in the box, is what people were saying, So like, I'm working on like going out there and stepping in a box and shooting, you know. Um, Nowadays people talk about entries and exits a lot. Like if you talk to almost any competitive shooter, they're going to say, very likely to say is like, yeah, I really want to work on my entries and exits. Like entries and exits are going to come from, if you really got that visual aggressiveness thing going, like, and you want to see stuff, that's going to happen. Your
Yeah.
body's gonna, and like, believe like technique kind of stuff. These days I tell folks like, very heavy on concept, pretty light on technique, because people will develop their own techniques. So like an entry and an exit, instead of like wrapping yourself around like, hey, how am I going to get in or out of here? It's like, what do you want to do? Yeah, what do you want to see? So if you get your eyes up to like mentally, you set your mind to a task, like, hey, I got to see that target. It's going to be somewhere around that wall or whatever. And when that's done, there's something else to do over here. If those intentions are going, like, your mind has complete control over your body at a much higher level of ability and like driving than you could consciously tell yourself, like, okay, exit this position, blend these positions. Like, nah, man, like, and everybody that would have a technique, I think, on a lot of that stuff, or like people that can teach it and like help people with the nuances of it, they do it because they want to see stuff, and that like that
Yeah.
drove, them to get to where they are. Like, back in the day, like where they were talking about the GMs were shooting as soon as their foot touches the ground. Like, the dude's not thinking about his foot touching the ground. Yeah, he's thinking about like, hey, I got to be over here to see that target. Okay, let's get over there and see that target.
Well, you told me something once, kind of in line with this, right? That really stuck with me, and has been like a big. Well, you were a huge mentor to me anyway, dude. And I owe you a lot. Like you really got me on the right track with shooting. So just so you know, but something you said that has stuck with me ever since you said it, and I think you said it the first time we trained together at that class in Ohio. Remember that first time we trained
Yeah,
together outside of the Army? I mean, in one of
yeah,
your classes.
yeah,
I mean, obviously we trained together before then, but you know what
yeah,
I mean.
yeah,
You said that we've all got this supercomputer in our subconscious. And if you tell it what you want to do and let it figure it out, it will figure it out.
yep,
And that has
yeah,
stuck with me ever since. Like give it the desired end state and then just kind of leave it alone and let
yeah,
it get a bunch of reps in, seeing what you need to see and let it figure it out.
yeah,
And you were talking about your hand position when you ran. You said all the guys at the SOD D were making fun of your hand
yeah,
because your hand was already set to receive the gun when you ran.
yeah. Yeah, and I didn't know that. I was like, I totally consciously not thinking about that. Like, all I was like,
Yeah.
consciously was like, I want to shoot. Like, I'm gonna run in, so it just makes us take the hand off the gun. It's just a thing that happened, But like, yeah, the mind's like, all right, bro, like, you need this when you see the thing, you need that. You need that on there. So here, keep it close.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When you see the thing, you got to do the thing, right?
yeah, heck yeah, man. If we can put a lot of $20 words on stuff and on shooting and everything, but man, that's all you got to do, man. You got to see the place, see the thing, and do the thing. Um,
Well, that and like, your whole slogan, right? Like let it do is like just kind of you got to kind of like we were talking earlier about shooting being such a Zen thing, right? And I have, and I do because you know me a long time. Like my demon that I fight is trying to force it to happen.
yeah.
I want to bend the universe to my will. Dude, the universe could give two shits about my will. It doesn't care.
Right. Right. Yeah.
I just got to let it happen, and
Yeah.
I'm getting better at it, but it's going to be a lifelong struggle because it's
I
just,
know.
that's my demon to fight, you know?
Oh,
But the better I get at that, the better my shooting gets. And honestly, the better the rest of my life gets because that's not just a shooting thing. That's everything in life.
yeah. I see that,
So
man.
here's a question for you, dude. So how has all this process, right? Like becoming a GM, becoming the shooter, like all this training you've done, your evolution in training and thinking about it, how has that influenced the rest of your life in a positive way? Like what kind of effects has that had on everything else?
Oh shoot, man. I don't know, man. Shooting is kind of like almost life, for me. I love it. I do love shooting or fishing as well. So I'll get down that rabbit hole sometimes. I get like deep into fishing and like I zen out on fishing. But um, I don't know. It's been good, man. It's been I've kind of been around the world, around the country. I've met a lot of really cool people through shooting. And so that's been a really cool thing. And getting to share, like I tell people, like I don't know everything there is to know about shooting. I don't have all the experiences, but um, the other day, earlier this year, I was thinking, I was like, holy shit, man, it's been 20 years that I've been, I guess, put a label on a professional shooter. You know,
Yeah.
um, I think it was what was it? March 2004. I went to SFAL, and then I came back and worked as an AI after that. So like, wow, that's 20 years of like, and not just like, hey, it was like something I did. It was like part of my existence. Like it's been a passion, even from like, first day of doing up drills on range 58 out there. Like I liked it, and it was like, yeah, this is the thing that really cranks my tractor for in this game, So yeah, it's been cool. Been really cool. I would like to say that it's all been like progressive, but it hadn't been because I haven't been really smart a lot of times about like what I do or how I spend my time and shooting and not always investing it, but got some of it kind of figured out.
Isn't that the cool thing too, though? Like, because that's one of the things that makes me happy in the classes I'm teaching now is that I think I'm saving people some of the wasted time that I had. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't mean that I was intentionally wasting the time. That's not what I mean. But like
Yeah.
training inefficiently, not training properly, taking,
Right.
wrong turns and dead ends and having to back up
Yeah.
and change course.
Yeah.
And if I can save like anybody even a little bit of that, I feel like I've done some good for them.
Yeah. That is true. That's a cool thing about I don't know if I like to say teaching, but like sharing shooting, like, hey,
Yeah.
this is yours now, like, go forth and do some things with it, maybe it won't take you 20 years to figure out all these things the hard way, or come back and like relearn some of the same things the hard way again. Yeah. But yeah, heck yeah, man. And this
Yeah.
didn't exist back when I was really into shooting. The amount of opportunities to go out and train and like gather information or take information from other people didn't really exist. There was very
Well,
little of it.
you can get more on YouTube now than you could get
Yeah.
from any source
Yeah.
20 years
That's
ago. I mean,
valid stuff, even.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
real stuff that actually
Yeah.
helps you.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
get stuff that doesn't help you too. It's out there
Yeah.
too, but
Yeah.
you gotta kind of sift through and get the wheat from the chaff, I guess. But
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, a lot of information out there, and a lot of different perspectives. There's a lot of really good people that good with shooting and good with teaching it and have different perspectives on it. So, yeah, if you're into shooting, man, like you could get, oh yeah, you could get a ton, and
I think
take
that's why
pieces from
people are
everywhere and
getting.
make it your own.
I think that's why people are getting so good so fast now. You
Right.
know, like some of these kids are getting good quick, and they're getting real good,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
incredibly good. And it's
Yeah.
cool to see. It's cool to see the
Yeah.
sport evolve. And I don't even want to say sport, the craft, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not just a sport. I mean, it's got application for all kinds of uses. Law
Yeah.
enforcement, military, self defense. But the craft of shooting is at a level it's never been at before, and it's just accelerating.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. And it's growing, like when I started USPSA, like the bigger match around here in Birmingham, I don't know, maybe 30 shooters, in a club match. Like now there's like over 100, like all the club matches around here, like,
Yeah,
will fill up sometimes, like frequently they fill up, like, wow,
our
that's
club
cool.
matches here in Austin are bigger than nationals were when I first started.
Yeah.
Some of them,
Yeah.
not all of them, but some of them, like the bigger matches, and
Mhm.
that's crazy, dude.
That's cool. I mean,
So,
like that more people are, finding it and getting introduced to it. And yes, only good for shooting. Look, let me throw this at you. And I'm betting you'd agree. Like, wouldn't it be cool if like everybody that carried a gun for a living or defensively had B-class USPSA skills?
oh yeah, and like I think you know what Ron Avery said about B class, right? He said
Uh,
B class was the black belt of shooting.
See
Like
that?
it's not the best you can get, but like that's the
Mm.
level where you're truly competent. Like that's the
Yeah,
baseline of competence, right?
yeah. There's solid shooting skills at B.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Very
and
solid.
like I'd be willing. I want to hear your thought on this. Like if I would be willing to bet that if you took, and not everybody, of course, but the average shooter in SF or even in like the SMUs, right, is probably a B class shooter. Like roughly,
Yeah,
roughly equivalent to a B class shooter.
yeah.
And like some of the USPSA guys might scoff at that, but dude, you take 12 guys who are B class shooters and can work together coming through a building, that's a
Oh yeah.
formidable thing. That
Yep.
is that is a force of nature,
Yeah.
right?
It's straight lethal.
Yeah, it is.
Lethal and effective,
And
man. Yep.
like if every and maybe not even every cop, but if every SWAT cop or every like active narcotics or gang cop or
Mhm.
if they had B class skills, you
Yeah.
wouldn't see the hit ratios we see in law enforcement right now. You
Yeah.
know,
Oh
and
man. Sorry. I was like triggered a thought I want to try to share later.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead.
Man, so and it's not just that. Like, so law enforcement is just a place where we get a lot of camera footage from LA
Right.
shootings, right? Happens in the army, happens in SF, right? Um, these days when I have an opportunity to work with people like where everybody is like doing defensive shooting or combat shooting kind of stuff, that's their application for shooting. Man, I would encourage like take cyclic rate of fire out of training. Like that's not a thing. um you know you've heard this, the like when the challenge arises or whatever, it's a bad day, you're not going to rise to the occasion, you fall to
No.
your level of training, right? The way I look at that and present it to people is like your habits are what's going to show up. So
Yeah.
you if you develop good habits that you always see where you want to hit, you always see your sights, and you trigger the gun clean based on when you see your sights, those habits can show up and you can perform well. If you have habits in there where you shoot guns fast without seeing sights, or like people frequently from holsters and stuff shoot off of mechanics, like their hands move and stop and they shoot the gun and they can't tell you where the dot was or the sights were when it fired, and then that shows up and when it's time to perform, like go, oh, you just throw your hands
Yeah.
out there and um, a lot on few layers on this one if they're out there. But so you take I saw some data on this one the other day. I was doing the TTPOA when last time I
Oh
saw
yeah.
you,
Yeah.
right? I was talking to the guys about this thing. Hey, like, let's take cyclic out of there. Like, let's plug into like we see sights, we press triggers. We see sights, we press triggers. And at CQB distance, like for good hits. You can be everybody could be triggering a gun. Every half of a second and affecting. I'll throw it like a 4-inch target, for at 10 yards and have dudes working on that. Like if every half a second you can affect a target in that small of an area. What's reasonable though is people can affect a target in 3/10 of a second. And then those
Yeah.
same size targets, right? If you were doing that, and that's something around like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? If everybody that trained that was going to go fight with guns kind of trained that way, and that kind of became like, hey, this is going to be the kind of the habit. We're going to see sights, we're going to trigger. You know, affecting a target every 3/10 of a second is not slow. It's not
No.
teen splits, but it's it's not slow and it's effective. And then you don't end up with so what ends up happening, like, civilian folks do a lot of bill drills. All right. Army dudes, we did a lot where we came from. We did a lot of 5 round rhythm drills. Right.
Yep.
You think back, I taught it. It was taught to me, but it's probably still taught that, as a combat shooter, you got different methods of engagement. You got single shots, controlled pairs, double taps, a variety of failure drills, to the body, one to the head, or pelvic girdle, whatever, and then 5 round rhythm drills. And I know, and I know, like, dudes like 5 round rhythm drills, right? Like to go fast on triggers. Um, that being, you know, thinking about life a little bit more now, I would say there's really only one method of engagement or one method of triggering the gun for a combat shooter. You seize the sights once, you press the trigger per view of the sights until you get the desired effect. And if that's the way we skinned it, and like in the 3/10 to a quarter, even quarter, like people can aim a gun, aim and return and trigger a gun in a quarter of a second,
Oh yeah,
in the in
easily.
the in the
If they've
7 yard
trained
counter
enough.
range, 7 to 10 yard range. That's
Yeah,
super
if they've
reach.
trained
That
enough,
is
they can absolutely do it.
Heck yeah, everybody's got that kind of vision and processing speed. But even if it was like every half a second, like one and two, and right, like that's effective. You hit on something earlier about like a civilian shooter having to go to a reload. Hell, anybody, man, if you get good at shooting, you don't have to get good at reloading a gun. Like you got 17 rounds and 17 to 20 rounds in like most duty pistols, 30 rounds in a carbine. Like, tell me again about how much this, like, and if we plug in where cyclic is a thing. So at the TTPOA, I was like giving this speech, and we worked some stuff with the guys, and I took a little break, right? And I opened up my phone. I'm looking at Instagram there, and Centrifuge Training, Will Petty and them, right? Had there was a video on there of a shooting, and the data on it was like in 4 seconds there were 40 rounds fired and an 11% hit rate. I don't
Oh,
know what 11% of 40 is, but it ain't 40. But you see it when exactly what went down was that guns came out of holsters, hands stopped, and the guns got shot at cyclic rate of fire. Like mindless shooting, and because it like got programmed in like in somewhere along the way in their training stuff. But I'm not going to say that somebody's not going to get excited when you have to shoot the gun. You're not going to like shoot the gun fast. I'm not going to say you're not going to. I'm not going to say like you're not going to go to 5 round rhythm drill mode. But if somewhere along the way, like what you programmed is like, hey, we're going to see and do, see and do, see and do, see and do. When you get excited, like you're going to have those habits of like, hey man, you're putting the gun in the place to see sights. You said index earlier. I talk
yeah,
about it as mouse. Like you build a habit. If you look somewhere, you push your hands out there, there's going to be sights
yeah.
there. Um, yeah, that was my soapbox moment for there for a bit there.
No, no, no. I'm with you. Like I tell people all the time because I have two kind of tracks of classes, right? I've got the pure performance classes and I got the application classes.
Yeah.
And in both, well, really in both of them, I say the same thing. I just don't do any drills for it in the skill development class, but in the applications class, I do drills for it. I'm like, look, guys, except for some extreme outliers in the real world in a gunfight, you should never really be splitting faster than 0.25. Like, I mean, and that's if you trained well. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it should be what, the terms they're using now, like predictive and reactive shooting,
Yeah.
and it should be reactive, not predictive in the real world. And I'm not saying it would never be predictive, especially if you're at a high skill level, but that's an outlier.
Yeah.
The overwhelming majority of the time is going to be see the sights, press the trigger, see the sights, press the trigger,
No.
see the sights, press the trigger. Because anything else, you're opening yourself up to too high a rate of error in most cases. And like, especially for law enforcement and civilians, like, dude, every bullet that leaves the barrel's got a lawyer attached to it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you send the round that reads to whom it may concern, that's on you.
Yeah.
And you might win the gunfight and lose the fight after the fight,
Yeah.
And
Man,
I think
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I had to rethink like what the everyday carry pistol skills were or should be some point in time. I was like, hey, wait a minute, dude. Like I'm like going to the grocery store. Like I'm not a dude deployed somewhere. Like what might I need to be able to do with a pistol? Like now, like I mean, like the 50-yard shot with a pistol here in America, like nah man, there's probably a better way if you just skin that cat than than like planning on doing the 50-yard shot. So yeah, like just along those thoughts, like what is defensive shooting, that you know um And it ain't a 5-round rhythm drill either. I don't think.
Yeah, and like I mean, I love doing build drills, but and I'm not saying you never use that as an engagement sequence, but it's not going to be Isaac Lockwood doing a 1-2-4 build drill at nationals, right? It's not going to
Yeah.
be that.
Yeah.
Unless you're Isaac Lockwood, in which case,
Yeah.
rock on. But most people are not Isaac, and they never will be.
Yeah. Yeah, there's some of that stuff. Like, holy shit, the Twitch stuff is crazy. I've got a build drill story. I got to tell you, man. So I had a guy from Texas came out and trained with me. He ended up coming for 2 days, but he told me, I think on the phone or maybe in an email, he said what he wanted to do, what his goal was to be able to, from 7 yards, shoot the gun as fast as he could, and basically a build drill, and everything land inside a $50. And I'm like, wait a minute, how big is a $50? Like, that's 1.25 inches. Like, hey, yeah, I don't know if that can even be done. I know I can't do it. I was like, but so I can't promise you that, but we could talk about, seeing things fast, processing information fast, controlling the gun, making the gun come back, recovery time
Like,
kind of stuff.
yeah,
You know,
like I do a lot of build drills on 3-inch circles.
yeah,
Um, and I'll do the head box build drill and try to get them all in the A zone on the head box.
yeah,
But that's not a sub 2-second run.
right. So the guy comes down and like when it boiled out, like we start training and getting like in through like fundamental stuff and everything. He's like, hey, let me try this thing. And the root of all of it, he had like a printed out target thing from Sage Dynamics from Aaron Cowan, right? And I like Aaron. I've talked with Aaron a few different times. But anyway, so he missing. I'll come back to that, but what he interpreted was that there was a 4x6 box in the middle of it, right? So from 7 yards, like a bill drill from the holster, a bill drill's 2 seconds to an A zone, but this was like a 4x6 bill drill in less than 2 seconds. So like, all right, so let's do the math. If we can get out of the holster in a second, a lot of people don't. I don't have like crazy fast splits, but if we can get out of the holster in a second and 0.2 splits, cool, we can do that. So I haven't done like speed at that point. I had not done like speed stuff with a pistol in a long time, you know. So he works the thing a lot, not getting it. I tried it some, I didn't get it. He goes to lunch, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna go out there and mess with this. So he had a bunch of the targets printed out. So I probably ran through 200 rounds of it. I got like a 210 and a 211 with all the hits,
Yeah.
but like I couldn't make it happen in two. I was like, damn. So that night, I was like, man, let me look up and see like what fast is on a build drill. And I found Isaac's or one from him. I was like, but he shot it. He shot like crazy fast. And like, I was like, holy shit, man. But he like said it. It's like, hey, they're not even on paper. You're like, they're not even all there at that speed. I'm like, all right. But with that guy, I was like, hey, look, instead of like, like going cyclic on this thing, like there's one view of the size 6 cyclic presses. Let's go in like, reactive. And that dude was like very easily able to trigger the gun every quarter of a second, and hit a 4x6. I was like, dude,
well, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
That's
So
solid. But he misinterpreted that. I talked to Aaron a little bit later. I was like, bro, that thing. Because like it was like if you did it, you get a patch or something, right?
yeah.
I'm like, bro, that thing, that's pretty fucking strong, Aaron. He's like, it's from a sight picture. I'm like, oh, that changes it. Like, you got plenty of time in 2 seconds from a sight picture. But
Now I will say this. Do you know Tim Herron? You ever talk to Tim?
I know of him, yeah.
So Tim's a friend of mine. Tim can do the A zone on a USPSA target and the head A zone about by his own words. I've seen him do it multiple times in person. And I've seen him do it twice in a row in person, but he says he's about 2 out of 3 on average, sub 2 seconds or right around 2 seconds in the head box A zone.
Man,
That's pretty
strong.
stout.
Heck
That's
yeah,
pretty
man.
stout.
That's
And
fast. That's
I'm
a lot
working,
of fast twitch.
Yeah, I'm working on it, and I can do it pretty consistently, easily well under 3.
Man.
But I've done it once under 2, and dude, I ain't gonna lie, I didn't see a thing.
Yeah, just like
it was just I'm gonna see how fast
repeatability.
Yeah, there was no repeatability there for me yet. I'd like to get there. I'm working on it, but I'm not there yet.
Man.
But Tim can do it. He can't do it 100% of the time yet, but he can do it, like I said, about 70% of the time.
Yeah,
which is pretty stout.
Yeah,
like that's pretty impressive. But that's not just like Isaac Lockwood's because Isaac did a bill drill at nationals, all A's own hits 124.
Holy
Like
shit!
that is, yeah, that is not something I'm probably ever going to be able to do. Like I just know that, and that's okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Man,
You know,
like
it's
that's gotta be like 10 splits or something like that. Holy
yeah.
shit, man. Yeah.
And it was a scoop draw too. So his draw was like 5-7. So it was a scoop draw and then like, 11s, I think.
Yeesh. That's wild, man. So that thing like split stuff, I think that's like a fast switch reflex speed thing. People like got or don't got. I
Yeah.
like some of the, on a timer, like the reaction time to the timer, that's a lot on print and load numbers too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's something else Tim has and Isaac too. But like I've looked at splits differently lately for my own training, right? And this has nothing to do with application. Like I don't think when I apply my shooting in a match or it's never like I'm not going to be one of the guys that's splitting 11s in a match. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But I want fast splits in training for a different reason.
Mm-hmm.
You know how I've always struggled with too much tension?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
You have to relax to have fast splits.
Yeah.
And
Tighter
I've
this
been
is, the
working.
slower that is, right?
Yep. So I've been working on that a lot. And in training, I've thrown the occasional 11 since I've been working on it.
Man.
But it's not repeatable. I'm still usually like 15 to 17 at my best, and in a match, I'm like 18 to 20.
Yeah.
Right. But if I can get to where in practice, I can get 15 and faster when I want to, I know I've mastered the ability to relax and still control the gun.
Yeah.
Which is something that I struggle with. So I don't want them it's like we talked earlier about some things having a training value apart from the thing itself. Right. I don't want to master fast splits to be good at fast splits. I want to master fast splits to stop being so damn tense all the time.
Yeah. Separate the tension from the speed.
Exactly. So that's what I'm working on.
That's cool. That's cool. You can dig that. I think that stuff's important. Like it is important. Like in your growth, like, like you got to be able to do got to hit the targets. You got to see the right places. You got to be fundamentally sound. But to be fast, you do have to go fast to get fast. So
yeah,
some of that stuff will speed shoot stuff like that. It's like, it's good to throw in there some too, to push that like and taste that a little bit,
and like what I've been doing for the speed stuff, dude, is like, so I've been doing a lot in this virtual reality shooting simulator, this ACE. Have you heard about it?
Yeah, I picked your brain on it the other day. Very
that's right. That's right. I forgot.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's like, it's not live fire, but it's more than just dry fire. You know what I mean? It's like an intermediary step. So on Monday, because that's when they reset their like practice leaderboards, that's the day I give myself to just go as fast as I can. So I don't do it the rest of the week. Like I go in there every day. Like the rest of the week, I'm disciplined. But on Monday, that's my day to go, okay, how fast can I physically move the gun and still at least see why I missed? Right. So I'm not really holding myself accountable for accuracy, but I want to be able to, if I can't see it, then I won't go quite that fast. I want to see everything.
Yeah.
And learn to see faster and move faster. And then hopefully over time, doing that little bit of it, I think too much of it would actually break my shooting. But doing that, that one day a week, I'm hoping over time will help me get faster. It's the theory. We'll see if it works out.
I think so. It can be hard to ever get fast without going fast, I was telling like my training sessions used to be I'd go like set something up and I was like, all right, man, how fast can I do this? Like, mess that up. Let me do that again. Oh, mess it up. All right, cool. That's better. That's better. That's better. Like, holy shit. But I think a smarter way to do that now, I call it 50s, 100s, but it's not really 50s. So it's like, do something like, I do it with a target transition exercise, a real base target transition exercise, like 2 targets, like 6 feet apart, center to center, and the shooter about 5 yards away, something that like screams fast to you, and from like a low mount or something, shot on the left target, shot on the right target, just pushing like you see it, you trust it, you trigger it, dot lifts, you leave, you go look to the next place, you see it, you trust it, you trigger it, So once we do that exercise, like, all right, cool, now here's a way you can use this exercise and this concept with other things to get fast without the train wrecks. Like I had train wrecks, right?
Right.
It's like do 3 or 5 sets of it, at a comfortable pace, like 70% kind of effort, I said through 50s, hundreds of it, but it's really more like a 70% kind of physical effort. Still like no delay, minimize the visual delays, like not that kind of thing, but that and that. But 70% physical mental effort on how fast you're going to get the gun to the next place, right? Do 3 of those and then go as fast as you can go, 100%. Then go back to the 70s, go back to 100. What I find, I'll demo it and do it, and I see people do it too, right? So there's a 70, there's 100. There's a 70, there's 100. There's a 70, there's 100. And before long, what felt like 100 to you is happening at 70% effort,
Oh, dude, it's funny you say that because the other day I did that for the first time, just like independently. Like because I'm trying to work on having a better mental transmission, being able to control like, okay, here's my IDPA speed, here's my USPSA speed, here's my pushing
Yeah.
speed, right?
Yeah.
Here's my real world speed, and being able to shift gears. And the other day I had like this light bulb moment where I'm like, well, why don't I just start shifting gears every rep and build that in? And I literally did it Friday for the first time. So it's almost the same thing you're talking about. Dude, it was cool. I really feel like it's going to have some benefit.
Heck yeah.
So that's neat.
I think it's a safe way to get fast. So a concept
Yeah.
like that's a safe way to get experience fast, without creating bad habits. Because everything we do, every rep is putting something on the hard drive,
Yep. I like that a lot, man.
Yeah.
So we've gone about an hour. So before we wrap this up, why don't you let everybody know where to find you, how to sign up for a class, how to buy your slings and your holsters and all the other cool stuff you make?
All right, man. It's already been an hour. It's like, damn, man, let's keep going. I guess.
Yeah. I know. We'll have to do
man.
another one if you don't mind.
Yeah, hell yeah.
We'll do part 2.
Good talking with you, man. But yeah, it's frankproctorshooting.com. Everything's out there. Class schedule stuff. Adding a few more things. This year, kind of boil it down like I'd say my bread and butter class, but where I really enjoy presenting. I call it the fundamentals of fast. We do a 2-day pistol version of it, and then a 2-day pistol and carbine version where folks can shoot carbine the second day, or they can continue to work pistol stuff. I'm doing some add-ons through the year too, where I'll probably do a few of them here as well, like an alumni pistol. So if somebody's already trained pistol with me, they've got the concepts and whatever, some of the philosophy stuff down. We can do more go fast reps, more mini stage kind of things, more like tying stuff together. So I'm gonna do some of those and also do some 1-day carbine stuff. So I've really been jiving with shooting PCC. Really been kind of good work for carbine game stuff. So I'm enjoying that too. Heck yeah.
Very cool. And don't forget all the cool gear you make too. So you got holsters, you got slings, you got all that stuff.
Yeah.
Guys. And I want to let everybody know that, like I said, you've been one of the foundational influences on my shooting. So I got a lot out of your class. I've gotten a lot out of being your friend and training with you. And anybody gets a chance to train with you, absolutely should. Just keep an open mind, listen to his concepts. They'll resonate and they'll help you out for sure, without a doubt. So, and it's been good talking to you, man. Hope everybody out there enjoyed it. And thanks for tuning in.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode of The Way is in Training. Please come back again as we explore how training makes us better at our craft and better in our everyday lives. See all of you soon.